Really, New Star? That's all you got? That's it? Huh. Interesting. The way you were hyping it up, you said you would make me pay? Make me pay? New Star, you're not making me pay with this. Uh, this is a very anticlimactic uh, movie to say the least because the way you were hyping this up, it seemed like, you were going to make me pay. You didn't make me pay with this one. I think you're going to have to try a little bit harder. Maybe you have hit your plateau. Since I hit my plateau with The Room, and I'm still going to try to top it, I think you've hit your plateau. With the 80s, anyway. With the 80s, I think you've hit your plateau with the 80s. So I think you better move on to the 90s now, because I think the 80s aren't doing much for you anymore. The 90s are, you should focus more on the 90s. But, so now we have Mountaintop Motel Massacre. Say that 3 times fast. But it was made in 1986, and it's about Evelyn, an old lady who was in the insane asylum for several years, and she's like the keeper of the Mountaintop Motel. It's a motel, legitimately. She's released and keeps on doing, her job as the keeper of the Mountaintop Motel. She kills her young charge, as it's written in the text, out of anger, but convinces the cops that it was an accident. And pushed into insanity, she then proceeds to target her guests, first by releasing vermins, literally like rats, into the room, but then like using her trusty, whatever she calls it, it's like some sort of like a sickle or something like that. I have no idea. But uh, was it terrible? Was it typical 80 crap? Yeah, it was. Did you have fun with the movie? Honestly, yeah. It was better than Crash and Burn. It was better than Humanoids from the Deep. It was better than Ghoulies 3. It was better than the Barbarian Brothers, dare I say. It wasn't terrible at all. If anything, it wasn't fantastic. It wasn't top 10 of anything. Maybe top 10, like, never mind. Thought I was going somewhere with that. Never mind. But, yeah, I'm a little disappointed, New Star. I think you better focus on the 90s. Because I think in the 80s, you've hit your plateau with the 80s. I think you're done with the 80s. Move on to the 90s. Stop living in the past and start doing the 90s more, because you ain't doing very well with the 80s. Of course, I could be wrong. You could give me a terrible movie next time, but for now, just not doing it for me. So, let's go over the bad things about this movie. Well, there's quite a few. There's a consistent amount of plot holes. Like in the movie, a baby is waiting to be released 3 years. That's still a question I haven't found the answer to. Why this baby waiting 3 years to be released on the plot hole. And there's plenty of others, believe me. And I wrote my notes right here on my laptop. Ahaha! See? You gotta get with the technology. Even though I like writing them, but still. I didn't have any piece of paper or pen. My laptop was right there. I was just like, what, screw it. Let's see. It seems that Evelyn Chambers isn't necessarily the greatest movie villain. To me, it looked like she was trying to be Jack Nicholson from The Shining. I mean, it may sound weird to compare the two together. That's honestly how I saw it. But, she certainly tries. I mean, when she does have a good moment, she does have a pretty good moment. The story can be like a little eye-shutting. It does get a little, disgusting, a little too graphic about things, to the point. I mean, here I'm here eating, pretzels and cheese and watching this movie, and never eat pretzels and cheese while watching this movie. But the climax is very anticlimactic. The climax is extremely anticlimactic, if I may say so myself. It's very weak. It's very kind of predictable, which makes it anticlimactic. You wouldn't think they would do this kind of thing. They would try something more. The stupid jump scares, that we all miss, are missing from Mountaintop Motel Massacre. I like that. I'm glad that there weren't jump scares in this movie. That the slasher, simple kind of slasher formula from the 80s kind of keeps you interested. It keeps you involved with the story. While I thought to myself, I could be watching so many better things right now. I could be watching this and that and that and this, and I could be watching so many better things right now, so many better movies. Believe me, there are a lot of better movies than this. But I was actually caring about what was going to happen. I cared. I was like, oh, well, what's going to happen now? I was asking that question. I like the underground system and the trapdoors Evelyn used to get around from room to room. I think that puts a lot of logic into something very illogical. I thought that was very smart on their part. Oddly enough, the music isn't very interesting, but it's shot very interestingly for the 80s. And in the 80s, it's kind of cheap. It's kind of very kind of staticky, kind of very jumbled based on color. It's like just very it's just a mess. The way some of these these cheap 80 films are shot, but this one was actually shot quite well. I mean, it was very subtle with its wide angles and with its close up angles. It was very subtle. The effects weren't very good, of course. Evelyn is really the only character that's developed in this movie, which I did enjoy the Evelyn character. It's like a guilty pleasure. Even this movie is like a guilty pleasure. I did enjoy the actor that played Evelyn. I did enjoy the character. None of the other characters are really developed. This reminds me a lot of Vacancy, the movie Vacancy with Luke Wilson and Kate Beckinsale, which I did enjoy. I did enjoy Vacancy, but it's not as good as Vacancy. Vacancy surprised me of how good it was. While Vacancy wasn't perfect, it certainly did surprise me of how good it was. This reminds me of that, but it wasn't as good, and it still did suck. I mean, let's face it. I did enjoy the kills. I mean, they were always fun to watch. These stupid, dumb characters. They're actually not that dumb, because how are they supposed to know they're going to get killed in a motel, except that it's like the creepiest motel in town? I digress. But you tend to let those things go. The characters aren't very interesting except Evelyn. None of the characters are developed. They're not supposed to be. It's just supposed to focus on Evelyn. And these other characters are supposed to be people that are just supposed to die. And that's okay. Was it terrible? No. I mean, out of 10 stars, I'd give it maybe a 4, 4.5. Or maybe even a 5 out of 10 stars. Yeah, 5. No. I think that's a little too generous. Final consensus on the film, out of 10 stars, 4.5 out of 10 stars. And that was a lot higher than I thought it would be. So, yeah, New Star. I'm actually quite surprised. I mean, I thought this movie would be a lot worse. So, now, let me tell you how to get to see your movie. So, you go on Google, okay? And the movie is called Cool as Ice. Cool as Ice. And it is a movie made in 1991, and it stars the whitest guy in the world, Vanilla Ice. You're going to love this one. So, you're going to hate it. But, you go on Cool as Ice, or you type in on Google, You go on Google and you type in "Cool as Ice full movie," and the first video you see, it'll say "Cool as Ice PT dot part." It'll say "Cool as Ice Part 1" on Vimeo. 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 So it'll say "Cool as Ice Part 1" on Vimeo, and then you hit that, that video, and then you watch the first part, and then in the search bar you'll type in "Cool as Ice Part 2" on Vimeo, or "Cool as Ice Part 2," and then you'll get the second part. And I'm sure you will enjoy this movie because you're a new star. But I think I finally found the movie I can finally beat you in. But yeah, I think you've definitely lost your touch with the 80s, new star. I think it's time that you move on to the 90s. So, very anticlimactic on your part. You said this would be, I would pay. This is not the movie to make me pay. Gonna have to step up your game, new star. Because losing your edge, losing your touch. 80s, I don't think work for you anymore. 90s, it's time for the 90s. Cannot wait to hear your review on Cool as Ice. Remember, go on Google, type in "Cool as Ice full movie" on Google, and then you'll see "Cool as Ice Part 1" on Vimeo. Type that in, and then when Part 1 is over, you go on the search bar on the same site, Vimeo, and then type in "Cool as Ice Part 2." Watch that movie whenever you get a chance, do the review. Talk to you next time.